We good? We're good. What's up, everybody? It's your girl July from Kickback Couture, and today I'm gonna show you how to make your melodies sound more human-like. So, essentially, how to humanize your melodies. Alright? So, if you haven't already, hit that notification bell so you get notifications every time I upload a video, or you'll never know. Alright? Other than that, let's get straight into it. First thing I'm gonna do is grab an ID8, and an ID8 is a simple instrument device that has piano, strings, guitar, whatever you need right at the tip of your fingers without having to click too much and look for stuff. Very simple. The next thing I'm gonna do is grab a player. I'm gonna go with the Scales and Chords Player. This is gonna allow me to play chords by pressing one key on my keyboard. If you don't have a keyboard, you can also use the sequencer. But I'm gonna set my scale. I like using minor scales, so I'm gonna go with F minor. And then if I press a note on my keyboard, and I'll press the F, which is highlighted by this orange button here. This is the key I'm pressing, and the rest are blue, the ones I'm not pressing of the scale. Cool. So now I want to add more to these chords. So what I can do is add another note. So instead of 3-note chords, they can be 4-note chords. Also known as a 7th chord, which is notated by that 7 that pops up there. But I think I'm going to stick with a simpler tonality of triads, which is a 3-note chord. And let's try to use an open chord and see what that might sound like. Open chord is going to spread the notes out of the chord further than just, straight in a line. So with the closed chord, the notes are going to be right after each other, according to the scale, of course, and the chord that we're forming. Whereas if it's open, it'll be spread out more using the same notes, but it'll be spread out among different octaves. Even more apparent when we start using more than 3 notes in the chord. Open chord, closed chord, and it could sound very good. So, keep an open mind if you want to use some open chords. So I actually might stick with that. Now, what you can also do is add an octave up. So the key I keep pressing is the F, and that's playing the F minor chord. So if we add an octave up, it'll add this F here, and without it, it's not there. So it's just adding some extra anchor tonality. So if it wasn't open, also can add that octave down, which is this note right here, giving us a more solid bass line for our progression or melody, whichever we think we might be creating. So whichever you prefer. Now, from this point, after you figure out the settings you want in Scales and Chords, you'll figure out how you want to kind of structure your progression. What notes do you want to play? What sounds good to you? So I think I want to do something like that. So I'm going to create a clip. Now, you don't have to create a clip in order to start recording, but I want y'all to see the notes I'm playing in real time. So what I'm going to do is turn on this pre-count so that it'll count to 4 and give me some time to get ready. I'm also going to turn on cue record so that the notes will snap to the grid while I'm recording and they won't be insanely off, because sometimes I do not have good rhythm. And sometimes, not all the time, but let's get it. So I missed a note and I didn't do that correctly. So I'm just going to hit Command Z on a Mac, Control Z on a Windows, and try that again. That's what I want to do. So 1, 5, 4, 2, 5, repeat. Cool. So I'm going to select all of these notes and you'll see that they're all on the grid. The position is a 0 rather than like some weird number like this. That means they're quantized. Now, of course, this won't get you the most realistic sounding melody, but this is just temporary as I'm going to spruce it up later. So the next thing I want to do is copy these notes to the sequencer. So obviously right now we just have one note. We don't really have the chord spelled out for us. So in order to do that, we're going to make sure that we're not playing anything. Like if it's playing, it's not going to work. So we need to stop it. And then we're going to hit send to track. Now we have got our chord notes in the sequencer. Now, once you exit out of this, you'll see two different clips. This is the clip you recorded with your one notes, the notes you played, and the second one that was created and actually muted, the first one, is going to be your chords spelled out. So, the tricks. The first thing we're going to go over is randomizing your velocity. Now, obviously, the velocities aren't all the same, and velocity is how hard or soft the note is playing. Not every instrument you have is going to be velocity sensitive, so be aware of that. The way you can tell is if you press the key soft and it's quiet versus when you press the key hard and it's louder, then you know that your preset or the sound you're using is velocity sensitive, and they are not all velocity sensitive. So as you can see, these down here notate what the velocity is for the specific chord. Now every note in this chord has the same velocity, which isn't necessarily what we want to go for. So in order to combat that, we're going to bring up the tool window. You bring up the tool window by pressing F8. Okay, so you press F8 on your keyboard and you'll get the tool window. Now, the velocity is going to be like this little third thing down. So if everything was closed for you and you click on note velocity, then you will get the option to add, fixed, scale, or randomize. And we're going to ignore these top three for now. And we're going to randomize by, let's go to like 25%. I want to be a little risky today. And we're going to hit apply after selecting all of the notes. Click it a few times. Now let's listen to this versus what we had before. Also going to turn off that metronome. You can hit C on your keyboard, or you can just click it off right here. Yeah, so that sounds a lot better than it just going hard every time and sounding like, you know, you're slamming on the keys every single time. So that's dope. And another thing I want to do, I didn't hold the notes down long enough to kind of, you know, blend into each other. So I'm going to add more of a legato effect, which means the notes don't cut off abruptly. They kind of like blend into each other. So to see what that looks like, I'm actually going to bring this down to 0 and we'll bring this up a little bit. And we'll hit apply, and you can see that now the notes don't end right away. They kind of bleed into the next chord. There's some space, and that is called legato when you kind of slide into the next chord. As for this one, I'll just bring it out because the legato won't really affect the last chord unless, you know, there's some notes after it. So we'll just drag that out ourselves, and let's hear it. Okay, cool. So I like it, but I feel like these bass notes could be a bit stronger. So I'm going to select all of the low notes, which are the bass notes. And I'm going to come up here and click on this equals button, which will make all the velocities the same. I'm going to bring them up. Cool. So I kind of hear some negative effects of this note bleeding into this one. So if you have chords with notes that are the same going from one chord to the next one, and the notes are kind of over each other, like overlapping, you could kind of cancel out that note rather than sliding. So one thing you could do is kind of drag it out if you feel like that might be better, or you want to make sure that there's a clear split, and you're not kind of overlapping like this. And that's how it looks when it's overlapping. And if you didn't want legato adjustments, then you could just go side by side, apply, and now they're all side by side rather than overlapping. And you could also do a gap if you wanted spaces. In my case, I'm going to stick with legato. All right, cool. Next step. Now what we're going to do is also in the tool window. So I'm going to bring that up with F8. And if F8 isn't working for you, you just go up to Window and you look for, I haven't looked in this menu in so long, Show Tool Window, and then it should pop up for you. Now what we're going to do is go to Quantize, which should be the first one. And for here, we're going to randomize our ticks. Now, you can do a few things with this window. First thing is, if you would like to record and it not quantize right on the grid, what you can do is change that value to 90, 75, whatever you feel comfortable with based on your own timing. And, however much you don't want it to be on the grid, you can, adjust that. But we'll talk about that more in a future video. For now, I'm going to randomize this by some ticks. Now, I'm going to be kind of generous and say 25 ticks, and I'll hit apply. Now, you could kind of see the notes shifting around as I do this. And what's happening is the notes aren't all going to be slammed at once in each chord. They all have different timing. So cool. Now you could go through and do this to whichever chord you want to and keep going. You could add more ticks. Let's try 50 ticks and see what happens. Cool, I like that, but again, we kind of have some overlapping going on with this note, so I'm just going to draw it back a little bit. And that sounds good. Now, unfortunately, Reason doesn't have a strum option, so if you've been watching tutorials with people using FL Studio, there's a key to automatically strum notes in a chord. Reason doesn't have that function. For now, we only have this randomize option here within the quantize settings, which is honestly a little more realistic because every time a pianist plays, they don't strum every note up. They're not strumming every time they play. So, keep that in mind. But if you do want to strum, you'll have to go through note by note and figure that out. Okay, now the third step is going to be probably the most fun and excruciating part of it all. Excruciating, not excruciating. What you're going to do is cut them up. So you're going to take all the notes you see and cut them up. So in order to do that, you grab the razor tool up here, or you can press R on your keyboard and you'll just start cutting the notes. Now the grid is set to 1/16 for me. You can set it to whatever you would like, whatever you feel is most beneficial, and just add random cuts and see what happens. Let's hear how this sounds so far. That's a little crazy, but it could get you something very cool. Now, after you cut them up, you want to move them up or move them down. So this is called an inversion. Now, fortunately for us, we have some shortcuts for this. So we could take some of these notes here and we'll hold down Command Shift and press the up key, and we'll be able to move those notes up. If you're on a Windows computer, you'll press Control Shift and then up. Okay, so now If you want that much movement, then definitely cut it up as much as possible. If you don't want that much movement, then you'll do less cuts, okay? So if you want more movement, you'll do more cuts, less movement, less cuts. So for me, let's try to, maybe do something every 4 notes or 4.5. Let's see how this works for us. Maybe we'll add an extra cut here. See how that sounds. Yeah, I kind of like that rhythm. So we'll kind of stick to that, and you can keep in mind where you made your cuts based off where the note is placed in the chord. So this is the top note, and I like that rhythm of 4, 8, and then 4. So I can do that same thing up here. I didn't do any cuts to that one, so maybe I'll add a cut there and also do a cut there. And then here I did a 4 cut and then 2. Cool, yeah, I really like how that sounds. So feel free to experiment with how that goes. I'm gonna add another one there on the actual 4. The first part was a mistake, but it's not bad. Might change it later. And just kind of matching what I did over here on this side. So I kind of like the notes with the low velocities to be cut up more. So I'm gonna kind of experiment with that a little bit. Cool, so I brought the velocity of the last notes up a little bit more. Now what I would like to do is maybe add in some of those octave jumps that we were playing with before I decided that I like this. So let's hear what this sounds like. So I really like some of that. Let's bring this note back down. And maybe bring this one down an octave. Bring a note up here. Not the same exact note though. Let's see what this sounds like. Bring that velocity up so we can hear that tone a bit more. Bring this note up and see what we get. Okay, yeah, so I really like how that sounds. So now we have successfully cut it up. So we move some things up an octave. You can also experiment with moving stuff down, but for my case, I want to keep everything where it is because I like this bass note kind of holding the integrity of that chord in place, and it's going to be great when it comes time to adding a bass line in the future. Once I'm done with my melody, I go on to adding my drums, in which I'll use a red drum, a drum sequencer, or a Kong, oomph drum designer. Everything I'm saying is kind of jumbled up right now. But I'll add drums, I'll add my 808s, and I have a banging beat by the end of it. But this is how you make your melodies more realistic. So the first thing we did was, we created the chords using the Chords and Scales Player, Scales and Chords. And then after that, we went on to randomizing the velocity. So randomize your velocity. After that, we went on to randomizing the placement on the grid. So the quantization or the quantize, the humanization. We're not playing the chord or the notes right on the grid, on the 0. It's kind of delayed or it's kind of early, like regular human timing would be. And the next thing we did was we cut it up. We cut the notes up. We moved them up the octaves. You could experiment with moving them down, like I said, sometimes 1 octave, sometimes 2. And we just, got a rhythm that we liked for the type of track that we want to make. Now, I'm not sure where this is going to go just yet, but I know it's going to be dope. So if you like this video, definitely let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, and I don't remember what my outro was. It's been so long.
2 hours later.
If you like this video, definitely show some love. Let me know what you would like to see next in the comments. It's all culture, kickback, and cook up.